I was considering doing it in a little tiny voice like I was an ant, but then I thought, no, that'll be embarrassing. Hello, and welcome to Diminishing Returns, which is practically a Marvel podcast at this point, because they keep releasing shit, and they've got an Ant-Man film out this week, or soon, or something. So this week we're looking at the first Ant-Man, hey? I'm Sol, and joining me is Alan, who you just heard. I don't know what that was. What was that, Alan?
Well, it was a cough, but it'll probably get edited out, so...
No, it won't now.
Just clearing my throat.
Okay. Do you want to make some noise?
Did you hear that? That was me doing a tiny voice. Yes, that was Ant Calvin.
Which is what his sister's kids will call him in future years.
You know what we should talk about, whether or not is good? Ant-Man.
Yeah.
I didn't see it when it first came out. I've only seen it recently for the purpose of this podcast. Because certainly when this first came out, I was suffering from Marvel fatigue. Actually, less so than I am now. Now I really am. But, yeah. What about you guys? Sol, I'm sure you saw it when it first came out.
Yeah.
Being a fan of the series that you are.
Yes. This one came out after Avengers Age of Ultron as well, and it was very much intended as a sort of palate cleanser, I think. A smaller story in both obvious literal sense, but also in the more thematic sense, because it's a nice little heist film, which compared to the previous one, Age of Ultron, which is all over the shop. So yeah, I went to see it post Avengers when it came out in the cinema, and I very much enjoyed it. I think I've spoken about enjoying it a lot on this show already, which is why I'm being so forthcoming with that. And I went back and rewatched it the other day for the first time since the cinema, and I was surprised with how well it held up for me, actually. I was kind of expecting I find with Marvel films, they often lose a lot of the charm once you get out of the cinema and once you've had that soap opera installment kick. Yeah. And I just thought it held up really well as a nice little film. Anyway,
Well, I watched it 3 hours ago. I didn't enjoy it as much as Sol did. I'll be a bit vague at first. You see, I'm teasing you.
I can guarantee Alan loves the Hispanic best friend.
Well, not exactly. I like. I feel like it. If you'd done more better with that character, then it could have been interesting. He definitely brings the only bit of life into it. I like. Yeah, I think so. And I like the actor who plays in this.
Should we touch on the production of this film, because it's quite a long, sordid affair, really.
Well, that's it. I mean, the screenplay credit goes to Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish, and I know that's going back about 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah, and then Adam McKay and Paul Rudd also have a writing credit on there, which is, I mean, Paul Rudd's less weird, but Adam McKay, bizarrely. Yeah, this was the first Marvel Cinematic Universe film I was aware of, because Edgar Wright was working on it back before there was a Marvel Cinematic Universe. Fan of his at the time. So when I went to watch Iron Man, it was kind of with the knowledge that they were building towards this thing, and at the time I assumed Ant-Man was going to be one of these Phase 1 films, and it kept getting pushed back, and basically, yeah, a few years before it came out, before it was due to start filming, I think very shortly before, Edgar Wright ended up walking away from the project over creative differences, which is a real shame, because I do think I do wish I could see his version of this film, but honestly I don't think it would be that different.
It's so different. Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I think you could. I think you could remove all of the overt ties to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's a couple of scenes that feel very crowbarred in there, but other than that, I don't know. I don't know if there is that much that really you probably have a few more flourishes of like obvious
Skill.
fancy direction. But I don't know. Have you guys seen Baby Driver?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say this was about as good as Baby Driver in terms of direction. I mean, I
But
don't
Baby
know.
Driver is one of his worst films.
Oh,
Yeah,
I quite like
we're gonna
Baby
get
Driver.
a lot of
Yeah,
hate
it's
for that.
Pretty shit.
But no, I was really worried because Adam McKay was one of the first people that was circling the project to step in and take over. No doubt, friends with Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd pulled him in. He ended up doing a bit of polish work on the script, and then ended up going to Peyton Reed, which was a bizarre choice. And I was worried, it's going to be shit. But I think he pulled it off. I think
who is Peyton Reed? Because
he's done rom-coms primarily.
definitely I felt that this was very bland direction.
He did that Yes Man film.
The Jim Carrey
So yeah,
one.
very bland romantic comedies and other sort of feel-good comedies.
He's someone that the Marvel showrunners can control, basically, which is probably the main reason why Edgar Wright got the boot, because he's a director with very much his own vision and own style of working, whereas at this point, certainly, the Marvel films are just sort of, they just hire TV guys and, they run it like a TV show pretty much, and stylistically everything. It does annoy me, and I'm pretty sure I've said this before in the past, where people talk about, each Marvel film has its own flavour and all that well, Thor Ragnarok is the only Marvel film I've still not seen, but, so, I'll reserve judgment
I think
for that.
Phase 3 does very much have its own flavour.
No, it doesn't. It's like they're all just the same, with like a slightly different setting, or
I think Spider-Man: Homecoming had a kind of John Hughes-esque quality to it.
that doesn't count. That's Sony.
Of course, that counts. Spider-Man: Homecoming absolutely felt like its own thing. Thor: Ragnarok absolutely felt like its own thing. Black Panther felt like its own thing. I think they do, personally.
No, I just feel like I'm seeing the same film over and over again. It's all the same kind of humour, same kind of, like, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, Iron Man. They're all interchangeable, as far as I'm concerned.
In what way? I think one of the reasons I particularly like Ant-Man is the powers feel very distinct and unique compared to what you get in not just Marvel, but in superhero films on the whole. It kind of lends itself to quite an inherently different film purely because his powers aren't quite as gung-ho. They're a lot more... You've got to be more inventive to do anything significant with them, and that's why this film becomes a heist.
I'll give you that. I mean, I like that it felt more like a sort of 1950s, B-movie power, Incredible Shrinking Man and all that.
Well, I wish it had gone down like a proper heist movie route, because I might have enjoyed it then. But it kind of played with that without really doing it properly.
That's what I mean.
It's
like when people say that Black Panther felt like a Bond film. There's like one scene where it feels that way, and that's about it.
Yeah. And generally my feeling with this film was not that it was a bad film or anything, but that it was lacking personality. It really needed, and this is in terms of bringing in a director who's going to give it some personal vision. That's exactly what this film needed. Or a real impact star like Robert Downey Jr., like Chris Pratt. Paul Rudd is just not doing it. And perhaps if you let Paul Rudd off the leash, he could do more, but I don't think so. He is essentially the straight man in the comedy films. That's what he does. I think it probably needed more comedy. There was occasional points in this film where I felt like it thought it was funny, and it wasn't. But I felt like it was trying to be funny, and especially a bit of Paul Rudd, his occasional little one-liners and stuff that just weren't hitting anything. And it was it felt like a paint-by-numbers film with nothing of interest really whatsoever. And to be honest, I was disappointed in that because I wanted more from this. I felt like this was going to be not too Avengers-y, and it was going to be a little bit different, and it was going to be a little bit funny, but not...
I don't think it is very Avengers-y. I think it's...
No, I don't think it is particularly, but I thought that meant it would be better, but it wasn't.
I get the impression that basically Edgar Wright had done so much pre-production work on the film that a lot of his direction ended up staying in there.
The bits where Michael Pena is like telling his story of like, oh, so-and-so told me this, and then my cousin said this, and blah, all that bit. Do you know where there's like these little flashbacks?
Yeah.
That felt like Edgar Wright.
From what I understand, Edgar Wright did some kind of like a test that pretty much ended up in the finished film. Is that correct? I've not seen it.
Yeah, it's basically at the end when he goes full Ant-Man and ends up fighting some of the guys with guns in suits at the end of the film. He did a little, like a sort of test reel, concept reel for what the film was going to look like. They screened it at Comic-Con, and it's the bit where he like goes all small, runs along a gun, jumps off it, punches a guy. And this is it. I was expecting it to end up having really quite flat, uninteresting direction. I think there's a lot of quite, kinetic action and stuff in this film that works really well, and I wasn't expecting. And I think Edgar Wright's version would have been significantly better, but all things considered, I guess I kind of went in expecting the worst, and I was surprised how much it felt like it retained Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish's DNA at the end of it. It very much feels like their script to me, just with a few tweaks here and there. But I don't know, I really like that it has that kind of, like you say, that throwback to the old sort of 1960s, 1950s spy stuff. And I think for me that's largely because I read some of the old Ant-Man comic books back when I started reading comic books. I went through all of these Ant-Man and Iron Man and everyone in the run-up to... or it might have been after I'd watched Iron Man, but I was really quite digging how much of the original Ant-Man comics spirit was alive in this film as well, which I know is something the average film goer isn't going to get anything out of, but it really did evoke that very cheesy old school vibe, but in a way that never kind of diminished what you were seeing on screen, and it kind of felt like that Ant-Man was, Michael Douglas's Ant-Man. That's what he was doing back in the day, and because I like that they had both versions of Ant-Man in the film. Actually, in the comics, Hank Pym, Michael Douglas's Ant-Man, is Ant-Man, and then at some point in the 90s, they sort of rebooted it with a new guy, and I like that the film was kind of like, right, well, we'll do the new guy, but we'll hark back to the old. And I think that was an Edgar Wright, Joe Cornish thing. Actually, they originally were going to have this big team up thing with the two of them, but anyway, yeah. I
didn't know that backstory, but I assumed that Hank Pym was Ant-Man, and then when they'd done the film, they were gone, right, we can't do this thing. It was set in the 70s. It's like tied into the Vietnam War or whatever. So like, let's reboot it, but then have a hint to the past. So I didn't know they'd rebooted it in the comics, if you know what I mean. But I definitely worked out just from the film that, okay, that's probably the old Ant-Man story, and they're passing the torch.
Yeah. But I like that it did that. It was very similar to how Captain America really kind of leans into its origins as World War II propaganda and plays off it. I felt that this film kind of had a similar sensibility about what it was doing. And yeah, I don't know, so it opens on a scene that feels very much like one of these moments crowbarred in that Edgar Wright had no doing with, just to tie it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe a bit further, with Howard Stark and Peggy Carter having a sort of meeting with S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ant-Man and all that shit. And I quite like that. It just seemed like a nice... That didn't seem too gratuitous means of just kind of anchoring this in the rest of the universe.
Oh, I hadn't worked out that it was those guys. I hadn't put that together. I just thought it was, we're seeing a young Michael Douglas and they're trying to take his tech away from him, so he had to hide it.
There you go. See, it's subtle enough that it works on two levels. That's how it should be.
The technology on Michael Douglas was pretty great as well. I think
there's plenty of footage of him from
yeah.
It was weird though, because it was like young Michael Douglas, but like that kind of old throat cancer voice coming out of it. So it was kind of weird.
But no, I agree, because that's a technique that started popping up in films and for the longest while was so shit. Every time it happened, it was like, oh my god, what are you doing? And yeah, like, it's done really well there. It they get away with it. It looks good. It's nice. It's almost like a post-credit scene, but they put it at the start of the film. That's what that is. It's just a nice little coda that kind of...
because they forgot to put it in the previous Avengers film. Like, oh shit, we're going to make Ant-Man. Forgot. Yeah, it's interesting that you were saying it sort of harks back to the 50s or whatever. Because for me, when I was watching this film, I just thought, I feel like I've been transported to 1995. This is the sort of plotting and the character and stuff they do in this is just like, I can't believe you're doing this now. Like, just such, like, for example, like, oh yeah, he's a criminal, right? But, oh no, he did it for good reasons, and he's like Robin Hood.
I can't stand that, yeah.
Or like, just a character with a ridiculous Russian accent. It's just like, what's that? How are we doing that in 2015 or whenever this was? It's like, this it felt like a 20-year-old script that someone had made.
That was, I remember hearing about the production of that, and I'm almost certain, from what I remember, that was a last-minute change to make him Russian, and it's like, yeah, I don't like that.
But why? It's not character relevant, and the guy can't do the accent, so why do it?
No, I agree, it's bizarre. My understanding of Scott Lang, is he called, the new Ant-Man? My understanding is that he's actually quite a dark character in the comics, and certainly what I've read that involves Ant-Man, he's not a particularly nice guy. He's very troubled. He ends up in a kind of abusive thing with the Wasp, who's his Janet Van Pym or whatever she's called, his wife in the comics. Not to spoil where their relationship's headed in the films or anything, but he ends up beating her, and it's this whole thing. And like I say, he's quite a dark character, all things considered. So I must admit, it's kind of a shame that they seemingly have no interest in going there at all in the films, because you wouldn't cast Paul Rudd, would you, if you were gonna do any of that.
But that would be interesting to see, develop some proper dramatic storylines within these superhero films.
Yeah, well, in the comics conflict. They did. It's like Tony Stark's famously got his demon in the bottle alcoholism arc. Scott Lang became a wife beater, and he had all these sort of personality defects. I think one of his things was he was kind of he had a real kind of ego problem and insecurities to do with that, and wanting credit for stuff, and that kind of caused a lot of trouble, and he ended up being quite a rival to Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, but the kind of twatty one who throws his toys out the pram. And yeah, they've just kind of made him another. I don't think the films establish him as being.
Yeah, I don't think you can sell wife beater. There's no way of getting that in and making him a sympathetic character, is there?
Well, that's the thing. Everything I've read him in, he's not really been much of a sympathetic character. He's at best been a kind of anti-hero that the other heroes have to call upon, even though they don't really want to, because he's a useful member in their team, and he's always been a bit of an outcast within the others. But as I say, I've read very few comics that actually deal with him. So he probably was just a nice guy in his own comic books, and they probably got to a point where they were bored with him and started assassinating his character to make him more interesting. But I mean, I agree. It's a very basic setup, but I don't see that as a problem. It harks back to I love Men in Black. What's wrong with 1995 or whenever it came out?
Men in Black was after that and a lot better. No, it just felt really old fashioned by modern standards. I didn't even really care about him and his kid and all that. It's just like, oh yeah, he's got a kid that he loves. Wow.
Yeah, but that's how I feel every time I see a child's photo on Facebook. I mean, that's par for the course.
Well, I mean, if there's one thing I know Saul likes in a film, it's nothingy performance in a nothingy role by Judy Greer. So
hey, my favorite part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and she is coming back for the sequel. That's why I had it in my head that she was going to be in the new Jurassic World, because I was looking at the cast list for Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I muddled them up.
Can we talk about the cast a little bit, because I think the cast is really shit.
People, isn't it? Well, no, I was going to say there's a lot of weird little, like the boss of the Baskin Robbins. At the start there's an extended sort of weird comedy thing with the boss. There is a stand-up comedian called Neil Hamburger. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Hamburger.
He's not that good. Neil Hamburger is he's well worth following on Twitter, because his whole thing is just every now and then he'll just search for like McDonald's diarrhea, and then he'll just retweet like 100 people that have tweeted like, "Man, I'm never eating at McDonald's again. It gave me diarrhea." He just does this weird assassination of corporate accounts, and it's bizarre.
Well, actually, he was fine as like a little comedy character in the little scene that was probably the closest to actually trying to be comedy. But the rest of the proper casting, like your main bad guy and then the main woman,
awful.
Are both just really TV actors. I get nothing from them at all. Like, but the main bad guy, is particularly awful. The woman is not terrible, but she just feels like a TV actor. I don't really know who
she
they are.
is.
Well,
Evangeline Lilly was on Lost, and Michael Stoll, is it?
Oh, well,
he was in House of Cards.
She did the Hobbit films, though, as like a stepping stone to this, so she's kind of graduated to...
I don't know if the Hobbit films count.
Yeah, James Nesbitt's in the Hobbit films, for Christ's sake. I mean, talk about TV actors.
So Martin Freeman, but he's a big star now.
Well, yeah, I still think Martin Freeman's a TV actor who's got...
Martin Freeman's a massive star.
He's not massive.
He's a TV actor who's done extraordinarily well.
He's leading films and having B-list roles in blockbusters. He's a pretty big actor.
But yeah, you got Paul Rudd. All right, it's Paul Rudd, isn't it? Michael Douglas. Okay, Michael Douglas is solid, always solid. I do think at the beginning, when he first puts the suit on and Michael Douglas is talking in his ear and all this, I think that's a lot of that is supposed to be quite funny, and Michael Douglas can't do funny.
I think it works without being funny.
Paul Rudd can't do action.
I don't know. I think he does. I think he does action as well as required. It's just a little CGI man running around the bathtub, isn't it? I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Michael Pena is the best actor in this in terms of his actual career. In this, he's not allowed to do that much, but he does it well, I suppose.
Well, I don't know. Judy Greer, I'd say, has got a pretty good career on it. But yeah, she doesn't do anything with it. I agree.
If Judy Greer is such a good actor, Sol, why is she doing these shitty little parts?
I know. She keeps playing the wife of the main character in all these films. It's really weird. She just keeps doing that exact. She did it in Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. She's like Caesar's wife or something. It's the weirdest little role to give her. And
then you've got this little heist team with Michael Pena, a guy who can't do a Russian accent, and another guy. And those other two, like those two guys, that's where you need like a couple of funny guys. Who are the guys in Fast and Furious that do those roles? What's his name? Ludacris. Someone like that. You need someone with personality in those roles.
I agree with that.
But the thing is, I'm pretty sure these people were all cast by Edgar Wright. I don't think it's like, we cast Kevin Spacey in the villain role and then the two of them left to make Baby Driver together. I don't think it's like, and you know, obviously, I'm glad Kevin Spacey's not in the film now, but
he's a perfectly good actor.
Well, no, it feels. I went with him because it feels like the villain they've got feels like he's doing a bad. I mean, Bargain being Kevin Spacey would be a compliment. He's like a.
I did think Kevin Spacey, with Lex Luthor's Spacey when he's got the ball.
And then obviously Kevin Spacey was in Baby Driver, which Edgar Wright went off to make, so it almost...
But that main bad guy is particularly weak. But another problem was, he sounded quite a lot like Paul Rudd. And when they were both in the suits and you couldn't actually you couldn't tell which one was talking, I wasn't sure. Because I kept hearing Paul Rudd going, "I'm going to disintegrate you, I'm going to make you wish you were never born," and stuff like that. I'm like, this is quite dark for but I don't think it was actually him saying it. Quick question about Scott Lang's backstory, because obviously all we see in this film is he comes out of prison and it's like, actually, I'm a computer expert guy and I just did a bit of hacking because it was a good thing to do, right? But then he's also an expert cat burglar and safecracker, which that is just like, I don't know why he has those skills all of a sudden.
Because
Any ideas?
He's like Tony Stark can invent anything. He's just like all man, anything science, he can do it. This guy's anything heist, anything stealing, he can do it.
if it said he was a computer expert and then he could I can hack the code, and I could buy that in terms of computers do everything sort of thing. But he blows up a safe with water, and he just he scales the drain pipe or whatever to get in there in the first place, and then he makes a fingerprint thing just with things he finds around the house in about 45 seconds.
He's good with science.
Yeah, but being good with science doesn't mean you know details of a safe made 100 years ago.
Yeah, because that's how he's applied his science. He's he memorized all the safes.
Yeah, I mean, you just need to accept that the character can do these things. I mean, it's...
But I could accept that if he was... I could accept that if he was a career criminal.
He spent time in prison, Alan, right? What'd you do? He's been reading He sat in his prison cell, memorising how all the safes are built, reading a big book of safes.
They must have had a lot of books in that library if you managed to find the one about cracking 100-year-old safes.
No, it's because there weren't a lot of books. There's only 5 books.
And one of them just so happened to be...
Yeah, it's how to dig out of a prison.
Yeah. But that's it. That one was always checked out by other prisoners, so he had to go with the safe cracking one.
Oh, well, yeah, you've explained that perfectly.
My note is that this film just felt like a fun, light-hearted romp, like an Amblin Entertainment film or something. It kept reminding me of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but not as shit, because that's a pretty bad film.
It made me come to terms with, because this and Thor Ragnarok, which again I haven't seen yet, are the two that people tell me oh, you'll really like those because they're funny and all this kind of stuff. No, but I'm just getting more and more, my patience is at its end really with these Marvel things. I'm just sick of sitting through them. Just all the same, just boring, just graphically plotted, you can just see all the people around it saying, oh yeah, we need to add in a joke there, we need to do this. It just all feels so mathematical and designed to appeal to a mass audience that I think maybe I just look for different things in films now. I like surprise. I like something that can shock me or do something different. This all just feels so samey. But barring a few excellently choreographed and designed action sequences, I should point out. Because the action seems really great. What
this film really needed was him actually holding an ant leg, and you can cuts to a close up and you can tell it's a fake giant ant leg that they've made. There wasn't enough him leaning on a matchbox and that they've made as a giant matchbox. It needs more of that.
I mean, look, I wouldn't have turned my nose up at that, but I don't think it really lets the film down at any point. And to be honest, I'll say I actually really was quite impressed with the special effects work for the most part in this film. There's a lot of macro photography employed where they've shot close up footage of the inside of a bath or whatever with a lot of detail, and then they've superimposed him in, and I think it's done really well for the most part. I
did really like the focusing effects, because if you did take a tiny little camera and photographed something at that distance, you would have that kind of focus going on. I thought that was really nice.
And my understanding is a lot of that was properly shot stuff rather than just CGI.
That's very impressive. Then, yeah, that's really cool.
That's the sort of thing that feels like Edgar Wright probably set it up for Peyton Reed in the pre-production to me. I might be not giving him enough credit.
Poor Peyton Reed.
Well, I mean, I've seen Yes Man.
I thought that was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I watched The Incredible Shrinking Man quite recently, and I just wanted to be more like that, really. I just wanted him having a chase as Spider and hit it with a safety pin.
See, I think this film really strikes a nice balance between that and being a superhero film. I think it really is kind of a 50-50 mix of those things, and I like it for that. I like that it has that playfulness about it, and they really get into it in the end with the action scene with toy trains and making Thomas the Tank Engine massive. And I love all that.
Yeah, I thought it needed a bit more of that, making a bit of fun with it.
I agree. I wish there'd be more of that, and I think the sequel's going to lean into it more. But I mean, I get what you're saying though. Going back to shrinking stuff, Alan, there's a real simple pleasure in just seeing big versions of stuff or small versions.
Just holding a giant pin that's obviously made of wood. That's what I want. It's spray painted silver.
Do you want to know what really bugs me about this film?
Bugs.
You're gonna laugh and be like, ooh.
Okay.
If you guys like the film, you'd get really angry with me, but I think because you don't, you'll be alright with it.
Okay.
It really bugs me the inconsistency with like how much he seems to weigh. Doesn't that bother you?
With how much he seems to weigh? Are you talking about... Because they talk about, like, how he can build up momentum and, like, punch things and stuff. Is that what you're talking about, or...?
Well, yeah, they go out of their way to establish him as having a lot of weight in certain instances. Like, when he jumps out of the bath, he, like, cracks that tile on the ground. And when he falls out of a window later on, he dents the roof of the car. And so they kind of go out of their way to kind of establish, he has the weight of a full man. But then he can run along a guy's gun or land on a record and just run on the record as it goes round. It's just completely inconsistent. And it kind of just relies on what the film needs it to do at any given moment. And I think there is some bullshit comic book science explanation as to how that works to do with pin particles and blah, 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 blah. But
I just took it as, like, there's sometimes where Superman can, like, glide gently down to the ground, or sometimes he can just, like, stomp and make a crater, and I don't know, it didn't bother me.
I just found it a distraction. I think it would be nice if it picked a...
Logic.
There you go, that's what I meant. That was what my noise was before. No, I think it'd be nice if they picked if they got in Elaine, then...
Who's Elaine?
I
liked that we had distinguishing features between different ants. So like, these ants are really good for this. These ants are really good for this. That was kind of nice. I didn't know that Ant-Man... I knew Ant-Man could shrink. I didn't know that he could harness the power of ants. And, like,
that was a surprise to me
ants.
as well. I didn't know that.
That's one of his big things, yeah. And I thought this film did an amazing use of it. This is something I think this film does really well, and it's one of the reasons I like it, is that it makes really great uses of his powers, which I mentioned before. But the ants is another one, because, they go into the police, whatever you call it, like interrogation room where Michael Douglas is pretending to be his lawyer, and then there's that shot of the ants swarming the lens of the security camera, and it's just nice little subtle things like that where you're like, that is a really good use of ants that would, if you could make them do anything that you wanted. And I like that they kind of portray it as just this old man's got this weird eccentric like obsession with them as well. When they're in the house, it's like less practical than like, I don't know, it really does just come across like he's picked his hill and he's going to die on it.
His ant hill.
He's going to make ants make cups of tea for him.
I did think it was quite something that it managed to not come across as too stupid or too silly, the whole ant controlling thing. Like, it could have been just a bit too much, but it was actually fairly... I bought it anyway in the context of the film.
Yeah. See, I will put money on Aquaman not managing to portray that whole power with the sea life coming to help him in nearly as good a way in the new Aquaman film. They left it out of Justice League altogether. They were like, we're not even going to touch that.
I did notice that this very much felt like a backstory film, like a character setup film. Like, it's half an hour before we see anyone shrinking. For that sort of thing, and I think that's kind of brave to do that. Like, and I don't know if it worked necessarily because it was quite boring. But
I quite like it. I think it works, but then I like the film. Do you want to know? Do you want to know what else annoys me?
What?
I've got another note here. When he first tries out the shrinking power. He lives in a flat that presumably exists above a nightclub that's like fully packed in the middle of like daylight.
Yeah.
Which is then above another flat where some like mother's vacuum cleaning up and the kids playing or something.
Yeah.
Like, what is this building?
It's called New York, baby.
Berlin.
Weird. So there is another scene that kind of after he's been taught to become Ant-Man and done his little training montage, that we get the most overt, I think, scene that was most likely crowbarred in after Edgar Wright left. Probably what made him quit. They would probably say to Edgar, we've got to put this scene in the film. And he was like, I don't want it in there. And they were like, well...
Who do you think you are?
It's a deal breaker.
Coming over here, taking American directors' jobs.
And the scene is, of course, he does a little kind of test heist, and then it turns out it's on the Avengers facility where the one cheapest Avenger happens to be.
I did notice that.
Knocking around.
They didn't even, they had him radioing other people, and they didn't even have their voices. They could have just used outtakes and, strung together some audio of just Captain America going, thanks, Falcon, good work. Couldn't even do that.
I think it's a nice little scene on its own, and it's a nice little fight, and the little jokes and dialogue and what have you are all quite nice. And all things considered, it doesn't feel as much of a distraction as it might do, because there is a purpose to it within the film. But that does feel like a real maybe cut that, and the film would feel a bit more streamlined. And
when he's having a big fight with people.
Yes.
Why doesn't he just stay small?
Well, so then they'd just be like, wait, where'd he go? What?
Yeah, because he can still hit them and knock them over with one punch.
He needs to build up momentum.
Yeah, I think there's an implication that he kind of has to go big again to keep moving. This is what I mean. This is why it annoys me with the lack of consistent logic, because if they established, he needs to go big to keep his momentum going, it would be perfect reason.
Well, don't they say, or they say when you're small, you're like a bullet. If you go fast, you can shatter people, whereas if he's just still and punching some guy's shoe, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't you just stay small and jump at him, or whatever he does? What's the momentum thing?
Well, he just needs to move, doesn't he? Run.
I think you're saying he needs to start big and jump at someone and then go small.
Oh, right. So he starts big so he can get speed going and then goes small. Right, I get it, yeah. Okay, yeah, fair enough.
I think.
I'm by that. That's okay. That's a good answer.
Except the film doesn't
stay consistent,
adhere to that, because he's small the whole way when he lands on the roof of the car or cracks the bathtub floor. So there you go. It doesn't work.
Well,
oh well.
That's all right.
Isn't it weird, going back to that Baskin Robbins scene at the start, isn't it weird that Baskin Robbins were presumably okay with being the product placement that they used?
I thought it was a bit weird, because it's not
portray them in a bad
it's not
light.
Really it's sort of a kind of funny negative light, but it's still a negative light, isn't it?
That's it. It doesn't portray, it's one of those things where you think, yeah, well, any company would probably do that in corporate America and blah 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 blah. But at the same time, I'm amazed that they read the script and were like, yeah, we'll be the the sort of minor villains that ruin the main character's life when he's trying to make a go of it and be a straight guy at the start. And it's odd, but I guess no publicity, good publicity. Maybe it's like Twinkies. Is it Twinkies? One of those companies have got I think it's Twinkies have got a deal or a rule in the company books that basically says they will never ever turn down product placement deals in a film ever, because I think it was Ghostbusters, someone didn't want them to do the deal and then they did, and then the sales went 300% through the roof following the film or something. So now that's why they pop up in so many films now, Zombieland and that Daniel Radcliffe corpse movie and so on.
I'll take your word for that one.
I love the music in this film. I think it's one of the first Marvel films where the score is remarkable.
Who did
rather than just very bland in the background. Christopher Young? Is that right? Or have I just imagined that? Christoph Beck, sorry, not Christopher Young.
He's done stuff.
I think the music's a big part of why it does have that kind of old school heist spy vibe about it.
Yeah.
It's got a great little theme tune in it. Yeah.
They should have done my heist film. Get those other characters, set them up properly as interesting characters. Like Michael Pena they did all right with, but then the other two, then you bring Michael Douglas has to come and help or whatever. Do it as a heist film. That's your big last 30-minute big action sequence.
But I thought it was a heist film.
Yeah, but it's just half.
Why are you saying it's
because
not a
it was
heist
just
film?
like a half-arse. They've set up a heist concept, but then it's basically just a some crappy superhero action stuff.
I really like heist ingredients in a film. I've not seen many full-blown heist films. I've realised when I was watching this. But it's an element that I really enjoy when you watch, an episode of something and it's a heist episode and that sort of thing. And for me, all I want is the exposition scene where someone sort of says, well, look, they got these special windows with big bars on them and you can't get through the windows and blah, blah, blah. And, you've got the kind of cool do music in the background and Brad Pitt's probably eating while he explains it. You want that scene, and then you want a few bits where they have to kind of sneak into a thing and get something. This film's got all of that. What else do you want? What more is there to a heist?
Well, something tying it together, interesting characters, good actors, that sort of thing.
Right, there is something tying it together. Interesting characters do not a heist make. That's nothing to do with heist.
Excuse me, have you seen Fast and Furious films?
You can't just treat it like a checklist. It's not. I'm with Alan on this. That's like sort of saying, oh well, Black Panther's a James Bond movie because he goes to a casino and wears a suit and has gadgets and all those sorts of things, and it's not.
No, but it's very much a kind of combination of, what would happen if we took a superhero film and a classic Bond-esque spy movie and put them in a blender. This is very much what would you get if you crossed a superhero film with a heist movie.
Yeah, a disappointing heist film and a disappointing superhero film.
I think it's still 3/4 superhero, 1/4 heist.
Maybe, yeah, but that's cool with me. I don't think I want a full heist film. I think I find it boring after a while.
I find superhero films boring after a while. Unfortunately, we have to review like 5 a year now.
I think it's probably more than that. It's like 3 Marvel films, 2 DC films, X-Men.
Oh, I like those ones.
2 X-Men's. Usually some weird, other one that gets in there, like Unbreakable or Incredibles. We've probably done about 10 this year so far.
Let's just stop doing them.
Let's do more like films like Raw and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane instead. That's what the listeners want, damn it.
I mean, I think Ant-Man's an interesting one to see what you guys make of it, though. Because I do think if you were gonna... I don't know, it was always one that I could have seen either of you going either way on very much. So.
It was one I was kind of looking forward to seeing, as I hoped it would be a bit different, and then it just wasn't good enough, basically.
I mean, for me personally, this is a highlight of Marvel's output to date for me. It's one of my favourites from certainly the first 2 phases. Probably my favourite from Phase 2, actually. Although Phase 2 wasn't the best overall.
What are the other films?
I think I'm one of the few people that didn't mind that second Thor film.
Yeah, you are.
But I don't know, you're often quite down on these films, but then you really liked Spider-Man and you liked Black Panther and...
Yeah. Yeah, I did quite like Spider-Man. And Black Panther was alright.
So there's that quantum realm thing at the end. I'm not a massive fan of the bit at the end where he's sort of, he's dead, but he's obviously going to pull something out of his arse to get out of this quantum realm, and then they just, that thing, he shoves that in there and it goes big.
But earlier on when Michael Douglas was like, don't press that button takes you into the quantum realm. You definitely don't want to do that. That was really subtle set up for it was definitely going to happen later, wasn't it?
I thought that was fine. I just didn't like the arse pull way that he gets out of it. This sort of, that just shove that on there. Yeah, that probably worked.
I'm not even sure what he did, to be honest. I don't know if I was watching by that point.
He took one of those discs that Michael Douglas gave him that make things massive,
growth hormones,
like ninja stars, and he wedged it inside the shrinker-majig and pressed it, so it made him go really big.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
I've put here that this film's got one of the best Stan Lee cameos in all the Marvel films, but I don't remember what he does in this.
Well, he's only on screen for about 3 seconds. I think that's what you like about it. He's a barman.
I think, I don't know. So, I mean, one of my notes is that I think it's a surprisingly strong, coherent screenplay to say there's so many fingers credited on it at the end. But from the sounds of it, you guys would say it's a classic case of 20 people getting credits on a screenplay, and it doesn't.
No, undoubtedly.
No, I think it's just weak writing. It doesn't
by
feel
20
like
people.
writing by committee. It just feels like someone who's written the most basic script they could, and then they didn't get to the point where they were going to put some flavour into it, and then the studio went, "Oh, that's good enough. We'll have that."
I just think, I don't think it's reinventing the wheel or anything. I just think it's really good fun, what you go to these sorts of films for. Like I say, it hark back to that kind of Amblin-esque, which I guess is kind of what you were getting at with this 90s vibe, although I was approaching it from a different, from a positive place. But yeah, it did kind of feel like an old family-friendly 90s movie to me, but in a good way.
Yeah, if you had like Jumanji level effects in that film, it would
Jumanji,
be like that. Would,
perfect example.
1995, that exact script.
Yeah,
well, we've moved on in the superhero world since 1995 in terms of plotting, in terms of what you can do because it's all been done before.
I think there's enough to separate this from the superhero pack. Personally, for me, it is quite a distinctive entity. I really like it. I think it's great.
All right. Well, what would you rate it?
8.
Oof.
Okay, I'd give it a 6.
Yeah, 6 from me.
Yes, respectable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to the sequel. I'm disappointed that Peyton Reed's coming back to direct it, given that he was such a last minute, mad. Oh shit, who can we get replacement? I kind of thought, okay, well maybe they'll get a who'd be a good replacement for Edgar Wright. Guy Ritchie's still doing quite well on the blockbuster front, isn't he? Wouldn't want him on it anyway, but
Nick Love and Danny Dyer as Ant-Man. Can we talk pictures? Because I've just come up with one.
Sure, yeah.
Danny Dyer as Ant-Man. I mean, does that not work?
That's it, yeah. It's fine.
That's exactly the sort of personality you need, though. You just need something. And
Danny
you transpose it to like London, and he's like a Cockney white boy. Like, yeah, I've done a few years inside. What of it, eh? Like that.
You know
He's
what?
Like, I love my kid, all right?
Well, we could have Michael Caine in it as the old Ant-Man then.
Oh, well, there we go. Look.
And they do a heist.
Yeah.
A proper heist.
Can we just call it British Ant-Man? Can we get Pierce Brosnan in there for the heist?
Why?
Because of Thomas Crown Affair.
Oh, yes.
One of the only heist films I know.
Okay, here's who else you'd have in it.
Do you want to know all the heist films I could name, right? The Thomas Crown Affair, Oceans 11 through 13 plus 8, and Bean, the Ultimate Disaster Movie.
The Italian Job.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. I haven't seen any of these apart from Bean, for the record.
Anyway, okay, so here's who else would you have in it, right? You'd have Toby Jones as a mad scientist.
Yeah.
Mackenzie Crook as one of the heist guys.
Yes.
When's this made?
Right now.
2003.
Mackenzie Crook and Toby Jones, they're mates now, though, aren't they? They do that show together.
I know. Mackenzie Crook's kind of having a career renaissance, but I think it's more as a respected writer of television.
Mackenzie Crook and Johnny Vegas. As the two kind of witless thing. Mackenzie Crook doing a Russian accent.
I would love so much to see Johnny Vegas in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as one of the heroes. There's a Captain Britain, like how there's Captain America. There's Captain like every country basically.
Oh God!
And I would love for like in one of the upcoming Avengers films, they're like, who can we call? Captain America's like, I know a guy, and then we get Johnny Vegas walks in spandex, and that's our representative.
Do you know who else? I'll tell you who else would be in it. Omid Jalili. He could be the Michael Pena character.
If it was made in 1999, if that's the vibe we're going for, we're embracing this 90s.
I think that was the last time I watched any TV in Britain.
But Omid Jalili wouldn't be in a British film. He does like massive American blockbusters and has like 2 lines.
He plays the lead role in The Infidel. That's the British film.
God, oh yeah, we're going down the David Baddiel level.
Who could be the main woman in it. The Wasp.
The Wasp opposite. So sorry, was this opposite Danny Dyer?
Opposite Danny Dyer, yeah.
Kate Beckinsale.
Oh,
I think she's gone a bit too big to be opposite Danny Dyer.
yeah.
Come on,
But she
nobody's
does
too
look
big
almost
for
exactly
Danny
like Evangeline Lilly.
I mean, what Danny Dyer films have we? There's The Basement.
Never heard of it.
Do you not remember we got screened The Basement as like an example of what not to do at uni?
It might have been. It might have been in our
that.
directing class. So I think it was in directing.
Did you not do directing?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't do directing.
Oh, okay, yeah, you wouldn't have seen it. We got screened The Basement.
Yeah, because the guy who was doing our sort of guest lecturing was the producer of it, and he was saying like how they paid Danny Dyer a sort of flat fee, and then there was like this underhand cocaine payment as well, like a daily cocaine allowance to keep him going, because he was doing like DJ nights at night, like guest appearance DJ things. So he was up all night and then coming to film in the morning. But he was earning more money doing a DJ set than he was doing the film. So like he wasn't going to turn it down. So he was just like bleary eyed and off his face all the time. Which is, that's what I want from Danny Dyer.
I'm looking for any films I've even heard of. So he did that Basement film, which we only know because personal connections. He did something called Malice in Wonderland, which
I know he did. Oh, what was it? Was it Severance? Something like that, where it was by the director of. I think was it that the director of Creep, that film on the underground.
Yeah, Severance,
yeah.
Human Traffic, is that it?
Oh, I've heard of that. Is he in that?
Yeah, that's it with John Sim. Yeah, he's like a young like. Oh, I'll get you some gear. Yeah, no problem. Like he's that guy. And then he was in that film with. What's his face? Vinnie Jones, the remake of Mean Machine. He was in that, playing like a slightly simple guy in prison.
I do like the idea of like an East End Ant-Man.
Well, it makes sense with the heist theme.
Can we just an East End entry to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? So it's canon with the other films, but it's just some like low-end East End gangsters who, like Vulture, gets a load of like high-end technology from the wreckage of the Avengers and the Spider-Man film they just did. If like Vinnie Jones is knocking around the East End and what's he called? Alan Ford, is that his name?
Oh,
what's that guy who plays every East End gangster?
Yeah,
in, like,
he was in
comedy?
Cockneys versus Zombies, wasn't he?
Yeah. Can we get him in there as like
yeah, definitely
someone? I don't even know who.
Oh, is that Rent a Cockney?
Yeah, Rent a Cockney. Yeah. Yeah, we get him in there.
Actually, yeah, this film, but directed by Armando Iannucci. Come on.
No, I want Armando Iannucci to direct the procedural, like, Shield behind the scenes, picking up the pieces, like dealing with the. I want him to direct the one about the not even Shield. What's that group of Jenny Aguters in it, and all those ones in Captain America films and the Avengers, the first one, who were kind of having meetings.
The council thing.
Yeah. I want Armando Iannucci to do that. Behind the scenes, Jenny Agutter running around, going, "Oh, for fuck's sake," getting angry with,
I actually love that. If Marvel were ever going to make me watch a TV show, that would be it.
They were working on a sitcom of that, like in that vibe. I don't think it got picked up by ABC or whatever channel it was. Which is a shame because, like you say, it's the one like pitch for a TV show in the Marvel universe I'm actually interested in.
So if we're going with Cockney Ant-Man, who's the bad guy?
Bob Hoskins.
He's dead. Right?
They can do wonders bringing like de-aging people with technology. As the first Ant-Man shows. So
it's quite a sad thing. It's quite a sad thing that we can't think of any contemporary Cockney. Film stars. They're all just poshos, aren't they? Like Tom Hiddleston and Benedict Cumberbatch and
you'd have to get
Eddie
someone
Redmayne.
like Russell Crowe to do an English accent.
He can do it though. Have you seen the Mummy?
I've not seen it yet.
Fucking hell, I'm Dr. Jekyll. I'm fucking gonna kill you now.
Oh, Mark Strong.
Oh yeah, Mark Strong. He should go to.
Oh,
now Mark Strong's too. He's been the villain in too many like superhero films already.
Good guy.
But yeah, he's exactly the kind of guy you want. There's got to be another. Like, couldn't Vinnie Jones be the villain? What's he doing? Brad Pitt, but he does it Irish.
Josh Hartnett, but he does it Yorkshire. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about who could play the woman in this. The
woman.
Wasp.
What's Vinnie Jones' daughter called?
Oh, we could get Ray Winston's daughter.
That's I always say. I did this in a previous recording, didn't I? Where I said what's his daughter called? And it was
Jamie Winston, I think her name.
Yeah. Get her. She'd be good. Her opposite Danny Dyer. I think that'd actually work quite nicely as British Cockney Ant-Man and Ant-Man Wasp Cockney. Is there a specifically British variety of ant?
It's probably really shit and can't do anything.
We used to get them in our student house. Do you remember, Saul? They used to march in.
Oh yeah.
Used to sit and watch them for ages in summer because they'd all just march in and go onto the second shelf where the bag of sugar had fallen over, and then they'd just be carrying a little granule each. It's very interesting.
But it was our house. It was one housemate's shelf in particular by the wall where they'd go in, and he got furious and he started squashing them, but leaving their half squashed corpses with their twitching legs wiped all over the cupboard interior, and you'd open it and be like, mate, why are there just bits of ant everywhere? This is disgusting. And he'd go, I'm leaving them there as a message so they know not to come in here. They'll see the other ants and they'll tell them. The other ants will tell them not to come in here. And I'm like, I don't think they're that. Look, they're just walking right past the dead ones to the sugar.
This is why I only had tinned food and ready meals in university. I wasn't comfortable keeping fresh food anywhere in the house.
We should have a scene in this film where... Actually, can we just do it about an ant that gets superpowers?
The powers of a man.
And it's like Fantastic Mr. Fox, but the ants have to do a heist into the cupboard, into the pantry.
Oh yeah, the ant gets the power of a man, so he can grow really big. And I know that Ant-Man can do that later on, but
he has the strength of a man, but he's an ant.
The strength of a man in the body of an ant.
Yeah, the strength and the intelligence of a man in the body of an ant.
He goes to open a door and it comes off in his little arm, his little ant arm, and he's like, "Rrr, I just can't do anything because I've got the strength of a human." And he's going to sit down at the dinner table and he goes through the chair and all these things.
The ants,
but he can really impress all the other ants because he goes into some student's cupboard and brings back a whole bag of sugar, and a whole bottle of milk instead of just taking a granule at a time.
No. The thing is that early on in the film, that's how they impress people. But at the end, the big Act 3, oh my god moment is he needs to really impress someone by getting a load of sugar, and they can't get enough out of the cupboard. So he uses his human cunning to do a heist on the wallet, and then there's a shot of ants carrying 10p pieces down the road. Not the wallet, it's the money pot where the guy puts 10p in every day from it, just change he's got. Yeah. And you have ants carrying 10p pieces down the road to the corner shop, and then they buy 3 bags of sugar and carry them home. And that's the end of this film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
And the ant is voiced by Woody Allen.
Oh, not anymore.
Yeah.
And Kevin Spacey.
He voiced a
Bryan Singer can direct.
Kevin Spacey's what are they called?
Grasshopper.
Grasshopper, that's it.
I was just thinking of James Woods.
I know, I always thought it was James Woods, and it's who's another twat, but for different reasons. That's a problematic ant film. Kevin Spacey reprises the role. It's the most ambitious problematic ant crossover in cinematic history. Woody Allen is the ant. Kevin Spacey is the grasshopper.
Are there any problematic women we could have in?
John Lasseter producing.
Oh, Roseanne Barr.
Yes. Well, we've got 2 solid pitch there: Cockney Ant-Man and Man Ant. What about
Love
Adamant does the soundtrack?
Oh man, he's got to do a cameo in the English Cockney one. You couldn't not have him.
What's Adamant?
Adam Ant.
Ant and Dec. Ant-Man and Dec.
Oh, problematic Ant. Here we go.
Oh, brilliant.
He keeps getting drunk all the time.
Isn't Adam Ant vaguely problematic? Didn't he have some like breakdown legal case?
Yeah.
Put them all in there. The tagline is, "It's Mad Bants," but the B is like a little B in a different colour, and then you've just got ants in like capital letters on the poster.
We're not convinced by that one.
No.
But that just seems like it would appeal to, you get Jay from the In-Betweeners like on the poster.
I was just going to say, you need one of the In-Betweeners on there. Anyway, should we leave it there?
Should we end it there, yeah?
Before it gets silly.